Hi, I'm Andrew Berry and welcome to At the Bench's YouTube channel. So following on from the last video that we did when we explained the when you should be using paste solder as opposed to using panel solder or wire or sheet solder, I'm just going to show you how we're going to use the paste or the syringe solder. We're going to be using a little bit of Silver Easy solder. This comes in a small little syringe. You've still got the label left on this one. They come in different weights. You can get, I think it's 3 grams, 3 grams, 5 grams, 10 grams, I think 30 grams. When it comes to silver, you get a bit less choice. We used to, at one stage, buy the 30 grams, but we found that it dried out an awful lot because we didn't use that much of it. So now I think we only have about 10 grams. Let me just check the box this one. Yeah, 10 grams of silver, and this will last us here in our workshop quite a long time. So anything more than that, you have a chance of it drying out. There are ways of rehydrating it, but it's never really going to be as good as what it was when you had it first. And I think to buy the 30 grams is a bit of a false economy myself. So I would always buy the smaller syringes because you only use a tiny amount, or you should be using only a small tiny amount. We're going to just quickly use that syringe solder on a Figaro type of chain. And the principles are exactly the same with all different types of soldering operations. You have to make sure that your joints are close fitting. They have to be touching. The surfaces have to be coming along and touching, preferably with no daylight in between. The joints have to be really clean as well. There must be no oxides, there must be no fingerprints or grease on the joint as well. So the joints have to be cleaned with a piece of emery paper or warmed up and put into the acid to pickle the surface to get that really clean, so there's no oxides, there's no grease, there's no oils on the surface. Once you've got those two properties met on the piece of metal that you're going to be soldering, you're halfway there. The advantage that you've got with syringe solder and paste solder is that the solder comes out and it's very fine, but it's also mixed with some flux, so you don't need to put on any borax or Orflux or magic boric or whatever you use for your flux, because the flux is built in to the paste. Now we only use the paste solder for very small jobs, for soldering chains, for soldering jump rings, or very small soldering operations. You don't use it for soldering ring shanks, or you don't use it for soldering large wide areas because you'll get pitting and it isn't that strong for wide heavy amounts of soldering. Use your panel, use your wire, use your sheet for that. But for chains, jump rings, if you can solder the ends of bolt rings, anything with a small little area, paste syringe solder is absolutely ideal. So I'm just going to snip these links to put this chain together, and I'm just going to quickly show you how all this works. I like to cut chains using a nice sharp pair of shears. We can cut very small thin links with these shears. These are absolutely ideal because they will shear the metal. If you come along with a pair of something like top cutters or side cutters, they tend to squash the links. So instead of the links coming together in a nice area like this, they tend to come together like this with a very small area that's actually touching. But the bigger the surface area that you've got touching on the link, the stronger the joint is going to be. Let's just put this together and we shall show you how we're going to do this. So we're looking at a chain. What I would always first of all do when you're going to solder a chain is always to inspect the ends of the chain. Have a look at the end link that you've got, make sure there is no split in it, make sure it's a solid link, and also look at the other end as well and make sure there's no join, because if the chain has come in to be repaired, sometimes the broken link is still attached to the chain. So just double check and make sure that the links on the ends are nice and safe. The other thing you want to look at is there's usually a join in these links, so the best place to cut through these links is going to be the join. So have a look at both ends, see if you can see a join. And I would always perhaps use, if you're soldering like a figure like this, is to have the large link to open up. It's going to be easier than trying to cut and open up one of the small links. But if you've got a curb or a trace or a belcher, obviously all the links are going to be the same. Right, we're going to get the shears. First of all, what I'm going to do is just get a little bit of emery paper, find the area that we're going to cut through, just get a bit of emery paper and just pull that over the link. Just clean that immediate area, get the pair of shears, find the joint. It's usually on the ends of the link. Get your shears, come along and just cut through like that. The link opens up, it's a nice clean joint. Get the opposite end and just pop that through like that. You can grab another pair of pliers or another pair of tweezers or a pair of snipe nose pliers, whatever you've got. Grab onto the link and need to make sure now that that joint comes together nice and tight, and it's got to be flush. So you can take them, just like a jump ring, you can take the links past and then bring them back right into position. Just like that. Okay, pop that up onto your soldering block. And then get your solder, and what you want to do is just sort of almost wipe the solder across the joint. How much solder? I've got enough solder just coming out mixed up with the paste. There's about the width of the link that I've got, and that's always a good little gauge, is to have as much solder as the thickness of the link is. Comes out on top of the joint. It's better to bring it out so it comes out on top of the joint, because when you heat up the link, the flux then is going to sort of melt and spread, and it'll spread evenly over the joint. Heat up both sides of this joint evenly. Heat up one side, the flux is going to move to one side, and so will the solder. So here's my joint here. Warm it up. And what you want to do is don't breathe in the fumes that comes off the paste. Let the fumes come up. Gently warm it up. I've got the flame, you can see where the flame is hottest over the link here. We bring the flame then towards the link, come back and forth. The flux moves across both surfaces. The solder comes along, the solder joins. Don't really need to turn it over, just make sure the solder has come through. Perfect solder joint, pop that into the acid. Or your safety pickle, whatever you want to use. I would always put it in when it's warm like that. It's quicker and it's easier. And there we have got our solder joint all nicely done. What you could do then is never put that up onto a bench mounted polishing motor. It's just far too dangerous. What I advise you to do is get a brass brush with some warm soapy water just to go over the area that you have just soldered. It will bring it up nice and bright again. If you find that you've got a little bit of flux, perhaps a little bit of flux left on it, you can take it off with your fingers, or if you need to, you can get a file just to smooth anything scaggy bits, or you can even get a little buff stick to come along and just clean up that link if you feel that you could have perhaps done a better job, or perhaps you've got a little bit too much solder. Clean it up, brass brush. We've already produced a film at the bench where we've used a brass brush to clean. I will put a link to that up in one of these corners by here, so you can see how we clean up fine chains using a brass brush and some soapy water. And the technique for soldering jump rings is exactly the same, although jump rings are usually open when you receive them. I would always go over the ends, just rub the ends with a little bit of emery paper just to make sure they're nice and clean. Ends come together, flush fit in, hardly anything, any gap in between, preferably those ends have got to be touching. Exactly the same way, upon the block, squirt your little syringe out to roughly around about the thickness of the link that you're, or the jump ring that you're soldering. Make sure the flux and the little paste solder covers both sides of the join. Warm it up, don't breathe in the fumes, always come back a little bit, make sure you see that little puff of smoke come up, then you can get nice and close to do your soldering. If the solder moves to one side of the link and not the other, it's because you've heated the one side too much. ease the heat back onto the other side, and the solder will always flow to the hottest part. And that's the reason why it's important to have close fitting joints. Always have clean, close fitting joints with the flux on it as well from the paste, and you should have no problems soldering using the paste solder. So don't forget, please like this film, please share it with your friends. Also, if you haven't subscribed already, please do. Just click the link down below, click the little bell icon to be notified when we have more films going live on At the Bench. Thank you very much for watching. Want to leave a comment, please do. In the meantime, my name is Andrew Berry for At the Bench's YouTube channel. Thank you for watching. See you on the next film. Bye bye.